Just before we go and have a look at Pinot Noir Clone 114, we'd just like to tell you a bit of a potted history of the importation of a handful of clones out of Burgundy. Back in the late 80s, early 90s, between the Wairarapa Vine Improvement Group and Martinborough Vineyards, the importations of Pinot Noir Clone 113, 114, 115, 667 and 777. Now these were all sourced directly from Professor Raymond Bernard, who worked for Onivans in Dijon. And these were, Nick, you've got quite a bit of history with these since you were involved with both agencies which imported that material. Can you tell us a bit about it?
Yeah, I was working at Martinborough Vineyard and chairing the Wairarapa Grapevine Improvement Group, and the guys in Martinborough are really passionate about adding some more clones to their arsenal that they've built up, mainly using Clone 5, 10 Bar 5 and Able. So we were keen to import more, a wider spectrum of clonal material. So the Wairarapa Vine Improvement Group imported the 114 and 667, and Martinborough Vineyard a private import of 113 and 777.
So those were the original imports. They came out of quarantine in 1992, widely distributed around the industry. But back in those days, New Zealand, the wine industry, viticulture industry was still quite young. And to be honest, we didn't, as an industry, handle that material very well. The material came directly out of quarantine. Those two importing agencies, the Wairarapa VIG and Martinborough Vineyards, sent it to their selected nursery for rapid multiplication, because they wanted to get vines into the ground as soon as possible. So the nursery grafted the 3 vines of each clone come out of quarantine, giving you maybe 100 buds. They were grafted onto a range of rootstocks, which hadn't been virus tested, planted in the nursery, trellised up 6 foot high. All the scion wood was harvested off those vines, used as propagation material, while the mother vines were sent off to the client. And that process happened for the next 2 or 3 years. So you had 3 or 4 generations of rapid multiplication, grafting onto a range of unvirus tested rootstocks. 2 problems with that. Every time you graft a grapevine onto a rootstock, there's a chance of introducing viruses. Back in the 1980s, our virus testing technology was pretty limited, and our awareness of the importance of virus wasn't as high, certainly, as it is now. So we do know in hindsight certain viruses were introduced, particularly leaf roll type 2, and that has shown up around the industry in 777. Some say that's not a problem, others have some question marks about that. But the other issue, not only the viral one, is every time you handle that material, you risk losing your traceability back to the original importation. In Riversun back in 1998, Nick and I, both involved in the Vine Improvement Group, realised there were some real issues with a lot of the material that brought into the country. We didn't have the traceability. We were therefore not able to certify to the clonal level. We could only certify that it was Pinot Noir, but not to the clone. As a nursery dedicated to trying to do produce the best quality vines in the world and be able to prove it, when we started our importation program in 2003, not only did we bring in new clones of Pinot Noir out of Burgundy, we re-imported Pinot Noir 114, 115, 667 and 777. And that means that we now have the real deal. The traceability was re-established to the original vines in the ENTAV collection down in Montpellier, Domaine de l'Espaguette. So the vines we're going to now look at, we have that authenticity trail right the way back to a vine in France, which means we can certify it to the clone. Enough said, it's an important point, but enough said, let's go and have a look at Clone 114.
One additional point, Jeff, is that the prefix B, 114, 115, is often used. That refers to Professor Bernard or Burgundy. The material we're showing you now will be ENTAV-INRA 115, 114, etc.
Now, just before we look at the fruit, I think it's really important to understand what the people in charge of clonal selection were really looking for back in the 1970s when this clone was first selected. It was a time when the world was actually a little bit short of wine. Growers were looking for consistent production. They wanted good crops year in, year out, and they were looking for selections which were pretty clean from a viral perspective. So that's very much what they're looking for, and what you're going to see over the next half dozen clones we're going to show you is quite a you'll see the steady change in the bunch architecture, and that comes through in the flavours as well. So back in the 70s, when 114 was selected, moderate sized bunch, but Nick, you have a look at it and tell me what you're actually seeing there in terms of the actual bunch architecture.
Okay, moderate sized bunch, as we can see here. The berries quite large, all roughly the same size, so there's no hen and chicken. Quite tight, but a little bit of elasticity there, which is good. So perhaps a little bit more loose than perhaps 115 or Able clone, and same with this bunch here. Shoulders that often require thinning. In terms of the wine produced from 114, I think the clone hasn't really lit any fires with many of our winemakers, so it bears out what Jeff was saying, that some interest in 114 initially, but then moved on to some of the other clones.
So let's go and have a look at Pinot Noir clone 115, and you'll see some subtle but quite important differences.